First things first, Alabama State Bar Rules of Professional Conduct. 7.2e requires the following language in all attorney communications. No representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed is greater than the quality of legal services performed by other lawyers. My name's Harry Still, backwoods Southern lawyer. I got my friend Paul Ripp here with us today, and we also have our first guest via telephone, Mr. Greg Kennedy. How are you doing today, Greg?
I'm good. How are you guys?
We're great. So, Greg, I just want to run through your background real quick. You are currently a member of the Gulf Shores Utility Board. Is that correct?
I am.
And you were what years were you on the Gulf Shores City Council?
From 2000 to 2004.
And then you were also the head volunteer for the Shrimp Festival for several years. What years were those?
Well, from 98 to 2002, I was a chairman of the Shrimp Festival, which made me on the board of the Chamber of Commerce, and I held various positions as a board member at the Chamber for probably, 15 years or so. And I was the chairman of that board in 2010.
2010. So, and are you still a member of the GUMBO Group?
No, I have been asked by the city of Orange Beach to be their representative on the board of GUMBO. I'm not a GUMBO member today.
Okay.
I will be, when I take up this board position.
So the reason I'm asking is there have been several articles written about it, but there's one in this version of the current version of the Lanyap that says that the GUMBO Group is going to have they're going to host our legislators down at the Lodge at Gulf State Park October 16th, 17th, and 18th. Are you going to participate in that?
I'm going to try. I've been invited by another stakeholder to the breakfast for Thursday morning. I'm gonna try to make that. And what I've gathered about it is, they're going to bring a lot of legislators down here, and they're going to, show them around, show them the new state park, convention center and hotel, talk about tourism, just that type thing.
So one of the reasons I wanted you to come on is because you and I actually had to work together on this Shrimp Festival business back in the day, and back in the day, David Bodenhammer was the mayor in Gulf Shores. And do you remember the David Bodenhammer rule of entertainment? He had it was an unwritten rule, Paul, where if he knew who the band was, they weren't playing at the Shrimp Festival. Okay, he didn't want traffic jams. He didn't want all that. It was a family atmosphere. Of course, it was very commercialized, but he didn't want Burning Man at the Hangout. And it's my position that that's what this Hangout Fest has turned into. And Greg, I just wanted, a local's opinion on what's going on down there every May with this Hangout Fest business, the kind of people that it attracts, and the services and the inconvenience it causes for the residents.
Well, let me back up. When I was a chairman of the Shrimp Festival, and let me just say, David Bodenhammer is a very close friend of mine, and a man that I truly count as a real friend, and one of the most respectable men that I know. He
made a very wise decision of giving me my first job out of college too. Let's not forget that.
Well, there you go. Bodie is a guy who will always tell you the truth. He'll look you dead in the eye and tell you the truth. That might not be what you want to hear, but you're going to get the straight skinny from him, and you can always count on the truth from David Bodenhammer. Now, when I was the chairman of the Shrimp Festival, the city they didn't interfere with what we did as long as what we did was consistent with the law. And, a lot of the ramifications of putting that event on was, blocking off the streets, and we did that. And then when the event was over, there was a big push to get the streets back open. The city of Gulf Shores was paramount in putting that event on, and they were always willing to help. Back then, Chuck Hamilton was he was the public works director, and he was a tremendous help. I can't speak to how it goes now. I mean, I'm not involved anymore, but I would think it's probably challenging with the new remodeling and everything that they've done down there. But what I will tell you is the Shrimp Festival was a family atmosphere. We did serve beer, and it sort of went from a fine arts and crafts and food event during the daytime to music at night, where we sold beer. And there's no question, sometimes we would have some festival goers that got overserved with beer. Which the Hangout Music Festival is a wholly different animal. We've done the last couple of years, we've been doing these little beach subdivisions down there in the general area of where the Hangout is held. And I can tell you that there is open drug use, public urination, public defecation, trespass, property damage. It's beyond me how the current city government allows that event to be perpetrated on the people who live and do business in the city of Gulf Shores. It's beyond me.
Yeah, death as well.
Well, yeah, there was a young man that died this year down there. So Greg, the information that I have is that there were 113 arrests in 2019. In 2017, it topped out at around 200 arrests. I mean, would that surprise you?
Well, what would surprise me is that if they arrested everybody who was breaking the law, I would there certainly wouldn't have anywhere to put them.
Right.
And I know several policemen who have, been down there during that, and they just walk right by. People are using drugs, smoking pot, smoking other stuff, and they just turn a blind eye to it.
And on the flip side of that, if you're sitting at your house on the beach during spring break, you can't drink a beer in front of your own beach house in Gulf Shores. Is that your understanding of the current law?
That is the elephant in the room that hardly anybody wants to talk about. The city of Gulf Shores pounds their chest and says we're gonna put our moral fiber on display for spring break, so nobody can drink a beer on the beach during spring break. But then they allow this, at the public beach. They block off the public beach for one guy, and to make a lot of money. Now, what I will say, there are other businesses, a handful of other businesses that makes a lot of money for the Hangout Fest, but I mean it's so incredibly ironic that you can't, even if you own a piece of property on the beach, you can't walk out in your backyard and drink a beer, but they allow that. That is so diametrically opposed to each other. It's astounding.
Money, money, money.
Well, and so, Greg, you always had to come to the council and apply for a public assembly permit. Do you remember doing that?
Well, we did, but we did that every year, and that was part of the process.
They're doing that? Do you think they're doing that for? Are they giving the public an opportunity to speak to whether or not they want Burning Man at the beach? Is what I'm calling it.
Well, I don't know if they do that. I know that there were some people that showed up this past year to complain about it, and they were basically shut down, is my understanding. I didn't go to the meeting, but I just think that this present city government, I just think they're going to have this event. You know, as long as they're making the money, and I don't think it's a secret that Gulf Shores, I think, is reaching for every penny they can possibly make. I mean, I just had to pay $300 for a site plan extension that would take the planning commission about a minute and a half to vote on.
And do you think that's because of this new school system that they've created?
Well, I think that's a very reasonable assumption. If you remember what the city did, they announced a lodgings tax increase, and the lodgings tax increase was for infrastructure upgrades because of tourism. Well, just after that, they said, and by the way, we're going to have a city school system. So then everybody was, we understand now about the lodgings tax increase. No, that's we're going to fund the school system out of the general fund, and the infrastructure upgrades out of the lodgings tax. Like nobody could figure out that if you didn't have a school system, you wouldn't be having to increase lodgings tax. So, but I don't know exactly the funding mechanism right now. I do know that there have been votes in the past. I was involved when we tried to have an island-wide school system, and that tax increase failed 2-1. Orange Beach had another vote not too long ago, and that vote failed 2-1. The people in Gulf Shores, the residents in Gulf Shores, I don't think will vote themselves a tax increase, and primarily it's because of the demographic. You know, there are a lot of retirees that live in Gulf Shores, and their grandchildren are being educated in Illinois or Wisconsin or wherever it is they moved here from. It's a largely transient population, and not many people who live in Gulf Shores are from Gulf Shores. And then as you say, okay, how many have lived here for 10 years, or how many have lived here for 20 years? You know, they're all from somewhere else. So, unlike school systems that are very successful, city school systems, that is, that are very successful, like Saraland. You take a community like Saraland, the whole extended family lives there.
Right.
You know, the students' grandparents live there, and sometimes great-grandparents live there. That's why, you know, blue-collar communities like Saraland, Satsuma, how they can have a successful citywide school system, because their demographic supports it. Gulf Shores demographic, I don't think, will support it, and they'll end up, you know, probably raising sales tax or lodgings tax or a combination of both.
So I wanted to, while I have you on the phone with us, I know you were on the council for many years, and you're still serving in a public capacity where you're required to pass a budget. I'm assuming Gulf Shores Utilities has a budget?
Yes, we do.
And do y'all have is your fiscal year September to October? Or
it is.
Okay, so
it is.
So just like the city, municipalities in the state of Alabama, most of them choose for their fiscal year to end or begin October 1st. And so here, so today's topic is ready, fire, aim, and in that I'm talking about the budget process that's going on right now in Fairhope. Okay, Greg. I'm relying on some information that I got from the American Society for Public Administration, and they say within the local government, the budget document is the most important policy document that the city can create. It is the document that can help citizens understand the factors that affect the programs and services provided to the public. If they adhere to the definition of policy as everything a government does or does not do, the government's fiscal year spending plan should reflect everything the government jurisdiction will do in the following year. Do you agree with all that so far, Greg?
Well, I agree. I agree.
So right now, and I want Paul to chime in on this too, the city of Fairhope voted prior to, now their fiscal year started October 1st as well. They still don't have a budget in place.
Correct.
But 3 weeks ago,
correct,
they voted to spend $2.3 million on some property.
2.6.
I'm sorry, 2.6 on some property at the intersection of 32 and 13 south of town down by their airport. And they have not, in no document whatsoever have they said how they're going to pay for it, if they're going to borrow the money, if they're going to raise taxes. Just nobody has any idea. And I think it's a really poor way to conduct business, especially with the public's money. What do you think, Greg?
Well, let me just fundamentally, a budget, it's a guide. That's the way I've always viewed it. You set a budget, you try to stick to it, but there could be some information that comes out, or some land acquisition opportunities that arise during the budget year that you haven't budgeted for. I'm not sure, why they felt like they needed to buy that property, but most municipalities, and I would think, Fairhope being one, they probably have a well-established tax base, and if they wanted to spend some money, they could easily go and do a bond issue and get that money, depending on their debt ratio and such as that. But,
right, but you and I both know you got to have to borrow money. It's an ordinance, so you got to at least have 2 public hearings. Then you've got to approve. I think it takes as quickly as I think a municipality could borrow money through a general obligation warrant would be 3 or 4 months to have the money in pocket so they could spend it.
Well, that's very true. But there are some municipalities who have a lot of money stuck back in like a restricted fund, like us at the utilities board, we have restricted funds that, we're trying to get to a number in the event we have a total disastrous hurricane and we're down for a year. We're trying to get to that number in restricted money. If Fairhope has that, then they could use that money and then, get float a bond as they can. But if they already purchased the land, or is it just under contract?
It's under contract right now, but they just passed a resolution on Wednesday night to finance the insurance and the closing cost, and they're moving extremely fast to purchase this property. Without having disclosed how they intend to pay for it. Not only have they not. Here's my pet peeve. Not only have they said how they are going to pay for it, but they have not had one single meeting of public participation dedicated to this issue. They've discussed it in work sessions within their rec board. They've had the only people that have spoke for it have been the 3 council members that voted for it and the rec board. The voicing of the rest of the community, which came when they very first came up with the proposal for the appraisal, they had a lot of people show up that were favoring another piece of property. But they disregarded every bit of that, didn't listen to anyone, said that it was for the appraisal only. And then a couple of weeks ago, it comes up and they pass it. Boom. No public participation. They force it through. And they did that in the very middle of the budget process. So the budget process had already been set up. The mayor, staff, and all were all prepared. So now they're in the middle of this thing. And this is the fourth year in a row that the council has not been able to get the budget done on time. And so we're all waiting for the other shoe to fall now and for them to tell us how they're going to come up with $2.6 million.
And they may be able to go get a line of credit for that, Greg. I don't know. I mean, that's not a tremendous amount of money for somewhere like Fairhope, but it's still a whole lot of money.
It's a lot of money, and it's a lot of public money, but it sounds to me like they want that piece of property really bad.
No, that's it. And the three council people involved, the appraisal that they used was very questionable. They had two items on their appraisal. One was a pending sale, and the other one was a listing sale, which
I've never heard of anybody using a listing in an appraisal. Have you, Greg? You bought a lot of property in your life, man. Will they let you rely on that?
No. The value of how an appraiser determines the value is based on sales.
Correct.
And in some some cases they may cite what properties are for sale for, but I can assure you, when you go to you go get a home mortgage, they want to know an appraisal based on sales, not speculative listing.
Right, and they are basing the three council members, Boone, Brown, and Burrell, all three based the sale and pushed the sale of this piece of property on the appraisal. Based it on the appraisal and used the appraisal as the justification for the purchase. So I agree with you 100%. I've bought and sold a lot of property myself, and if I had known that I could go and use a listing to boost the value of my property, I might have done that.
So, Greg, we appreciate you being on. I want to know what the name of your business is, where it is, if you have a website, how we can get in touch with you, and all that.
Well, we're Greg Kennedy Incorporated, general contractor. Our office is in Orange Beach. Our business is primarily on the island. We work mostly Gulf Shores, Orange Beach, sometimes Fort Morgan area. Been there a long time, and we're busy and we're blessed. We thank God that the economy's good and things are going well.
Well, we're going to let you go. I'd hoped our first guest would be Governor Ivey, but you'll do, Greg. You'll do. Well, we certainly appreciate you participating.
All right, no problem. Y'all have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay.
So you want to go back to this then?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Paul Rip, we have the Rip Report. That's a consumer organization. We really stress that that's a consumer organization. We want you to realize that we work all over Baldwin County, be it political, court case, any complaints you might have. We've had several people call us in the last week or two after listening to our podcast, some complaining about court cases in district court, some complaining about things that are going on in different communities. And we welcome your comments. If you have something you can add to it, please be sure and let us know. The one thing I would like to mention is, since we hit on it there and we were talking about that piece of property, they pushed forward at the city council, like I said, to come up with $9,000 to do the closing costs and title insurance on this recreational piece of land. Again, no one has weighed in on it. I'd like to give Corey Martin a shout out from the Twin Beach area. He's been arguing that the wreck property should be more looked at in the Twin Beach area, where the community has all said that they want anything that's where they want it. Mr. Martin has been in front of them 2 or 3 times. The other night, on Wednesday night, he talked to them again. Absolutely no comment from the council. These gentlemen are fixated on doing what they want to do, be it this piece of property or whatnot, and they're not going to listen to anyone. Now, what they're going to have to do to purchase this piece of property is that probably they're going to end up depleting cash reserves, and they're going to be depleting cash reserves for capital projects. So I do not know what justification the council thinks that they have for it, but it's a very, very, very suspicious purchase. I don't think it's necessary. It's not walkable. We've had several reports about 1 or 2 planes that made an emergency landing on that piece of property, as well as it's so close to the end of the runway. I wonder about the lights. The lights for the got 114 acres there, I believe. That's an awful lot of light at the very end of a runway. Now, this council,
Paul, quit being practical.
Yeah,
we're talking about buying some land, man.
Right.
Come on now.
Right, and this council, by the way, which I call a catalyst council, they all have connections to Catalyst. They're the thing that they recited the most over and over again was infrastructure and transparency. Well, they're not putting the money in infrastructure. They're putting it into a recreational field it's dirt. They're not going to end up doing a thing with it for years, and they have infrastructure falling down around their ears. And as far as being transparent, they have been anything but transparent. Other things that are going on that a couple articles again in the Lanyap. One is by John Mullen called Planned, Underway, or Completed. It's about Orange Beach. And it was where Mayor Kennan was given a report on different infrastructure projects. And one of them was the Wolf Bay Lodge. Mr. John McCabe stepped up to the mic and complained about it. And he was called down somewhat by the mayor. And then Councilman Jeff Boyd bristled even more when McCabe said the entire project's goal, that is the Wolf Bay Bridge, was solely for development, that it wasn't to reduce traffic or hurricane evacuation. Well, here's where we get into the semantics of it.
So you're talking about the bridge is going to go from Dock Seafood over towards Barber's Marina.
Correct.
Okay.
The Wolf Bay one. And, you know, they say the council and the mayor is trying to tell us that it's to reduce traffic and hurricane evacuation and not solely for development. Well, the hurricane evacuation is a given, okay? But if you think it's going to reduce traffic, you're going to build another bridge, another access point, and you think it's going to reduce traffic, you've got your head in the sand on the beach.
So let's take the island that's laying this way and turn it this way so that it looks like Manhattan.
Right.
And that's what you got.
Exactly.
The more bridges you put over there, it's not going to change the traffic that's on the island.
Correct. And I will admit it's not solely for development, but I can assure you it is for development. Give me a break. Now, come on.
Well, and I think it's going to open up development, certainly in the Josephine area on Fish Trap Road, 42 West, heading down towards Barber's Marina. No doubt about it.
Before they get the bridge finished, it will be developed. The development will begin. Other article, and this relates to what we had talked about before, the Sheriff's Department, is the article is Use of Force, and this one's by Jason Johnson, again, in the Baldwin Lanyap, and Baldwin Lanyap is the one that you definitely want to pick up for any type of investigative reporting. And this is an article about Jonathan Victor, who was shot on May 12th following a single car accident on Interstate 10. It was later determined that Mr. Victor did not have any weapon at all, and what they thought was a weapon was a fanny pack. And now his mother, and I may pronounce her last name wrong, but it's Donna Chessie, I believe, Chissesi. She's now hired Mr. J. Samuel Tenenbaum, the director of the Complex Civil Litigation and Investor Protection Center at Northwestern University in Chicago. It's also worth noting that Lanyap also has a lawsuit against the Sheriff's Department seeking the release of several records, again, to that very same case. So that's going to be worth watching, and I encourage you to read the whole article. Of course, I'm paraphrasing from the article and everything. Again, if you have any such complaints yourself or anything you need that you think we need to know of in relation to that, please let us know.
A couple things that I wanted to touch on. Our current county administrator, his former position was city planner for Fairhope. Is that right?
Correct.
Wayne Dice.
Correct.
And instead of promoting him up to a city administrator position or something like that,
right,
they let him get away.
They have stood the council again. Boone, Brown, and Burrell, they have stood in the way of getting a city administrator.
That's like having Seabiscuit pulling a plow in a field.
That's absolutely correct. And I can tell you we lost a very, very valuable employee when we lost him.
Well, I'm glad he's up here with the county commission.
I know you
certainly
are. I'm very sorry that we lost him. He was quite an asset, but and I'm sure I'm not putting words in Wayne's mouth, but I can certainly see why he would leave.
The other thing I want to talk about is the fact that the Baldwin County High School Tigers are headed down to Fairhope to hopefully kick hell out of the Toros tonight. I'll be down there watching that. And so then I just want to tell you a little bit about this. I after our last broadcast, I don't think I did a very good job of explaining my position on the legalities of the Public Service Commission beginning to regulate the private sewer. And so what I did was I wrote an email to Richard Dayton, the gentleman who was on our first podcast.
Correct.
And I'll just read this real quick. It says, now to my point, if you read Act 2009-773 along with the Constitutional Amendment 781, it is clear to me that the Public Service Commission is required to regulate private sewers unless the legislature or county under Constitutional Amendment 781 chooses to enact another form of regulation in that area. In other words, just imagine this. We have a general law that says, here's who will be regulated by the Public Service Commission. And then at the end it says, unless you have a constitutional amendment that says you'll be regulated in some other fashion, right? It doesn't just say if you have a constitutional amendment, you're off the hook, you won't be regulated. So that goes to my point also. If the legislature or county commission chooses not to regulate Baldwin County Sewer Service under CA 781, then the PSC must regulate in those areas where they choose not to. Financial viability, rate regulation, compulsory connection, all of these things. I believe it was the legislative intent of the Alabama legislature that all private sewers be regulated in one way or another by someone, either by the Public Service Commission or by whatever means the people in the legislature decide through a constitutional amendment. Now, on the other hand, if it's the position of our legislative delegation that they pass this constitutional amendment purely as protection for Baldwin County Sewer Service to avoid any kind of regulation, well, then I think the people need to know that too. Don't you agree with that?
Absolutely. And it also should be noted that we are the only county that is not regulated. And that should be some concern for people, particularly in the fastest growing county. And everyone knows we have all types of sewer issues from one thing to another. So this is an issue I hope that we're going to continue to push it, Backstory Podcast. But and we hope that citizens that are listening will talk to your legislators and push them as well. This needs to be resolved.
Now, I want to talk about apartments going in Fairhope.
Right.
And I know this is kind of your bailiwick, but I want to say from the get-go, Haim Snedeker is a colleague of mine.
Right.
I practice law in Fairhope Municipal Court all the time, and he has absolutely every right to be in the development business, to build whatever he wants to on property that he owns or has an option on, okay?
Correct.
So, all that said, let's do a count on the number of apartments or multifamily units that are approved right now, yet to have been built in Fairhope.
Okay, well, let me say first, last week we covered the fact that the mayor of Daphne sold a piece of property that Bayside School was going to tear down for a parking lot. It's not illegal, but it's sure unethical, and you sure don't want to see the mayor being the example of the person that's responsible for taking down a house like that. I totally agree that Mr. Snedeker has every right to develop whatever he wants to do. But I must say, being the municipal judge of the city, this corridor of chaos that he is going to develop is going to be a nightmare. And it is going to change the footprint and the complexion of Fairhope more so than any development that we've had so far.
All right, so I'm a visual person.
Correct.
So, and I think you linked this on our website, on our
Correct.
Facebook page already. So anybody that wants to go look at a map, go over to our Facebook page. And I think the name of the article on the Fairhope Times was "City Judges Project Up for Final Approval."
Correct, and that is Fairhope Times article. That's another blog site. I recommend them. They put out a lot of good news as well.
So we're talking about the intersection of 181 and Fairhope Avenue.
Correct. That's catty corner
if you were heading
Walmart.
south on 181, Walmart would be south of you and to your left if you were stopped at that red light.
That's correct.
The project we're talking about would be the property that's on your right if you were sitting there facing south. Now, currently, there's a storage building on it, and the back part of it is a private airstrip, isn't it, Paul?
Correct, with looks like a hangar with some storage. Not that much on there right now, but that's certainly going to change. And
that was the Klump family's
that's
property.
right, KLUMP.
Right.
But here's the totality of the problem. Now, again, I'd like to say that this piece of property is right outside the Fairhope city limits. However, it's contingent upon approval that they'll come back into the city limits. And if the city was to, sort of deny it and everything, they probably could still go ahead of the project, and we would get no impact fees and we would get no taxes. So it makes sense that we have to let them into the city.
And your cops would still have to respond.
Correct.
To any incident.
However, this project, what I call the corridor of chaos, cannot pay enough impact fees for what it is actually going to impact. You're going to have approximately 340, I think it was, apartments, 77 houses, and 16 commercial lots. In addition to that,
hey, let me correct you. It's 77 single-family lots,
right,
and that's on the airstrip property back.
That's
right
not against
on the road.
Back. Correct.
So right against the road, you're going to have 16 parcels that are zone B2, which is general business.
Correct.
Behind that, in some type of a configuration around a traffic circle, you're going to have the multifamily, and I haven't seen an elevation of it. I don't know if it's
Flat.
1 story, 2 stories.
The units.
Yeah,
yes.
the units. I have no idea what they look like because I haven't seen an elevation. And then there's 232 multifamily units.
232.
And that conditional rezoning would be, or I think the best way to say it is, it's a conditional annexation. They agreed to be annexed so long as the city gives them these 3 different zoning designations upon annexation. So that would be 232 multifamily units of R5, and then along right up front along the roadway of 181, you'd have 16 commercial lots, zone B2. So just clarification.
Correct. Then you would have the Battle Place apartments. I think that was 70-something units. And then on top of that, you've got Fly Creek Apartments, which is, I think that's like 240 plus 77 more units plus 45 condos going in on the same street. 3 projects, and you have over 625 units going in. Now, if you think 2 apartment complexes or 3 apartment complexes, just imagine what that's going to do to your schools. because you can be sure you're going to see a real boost in schools. It's going to be a problem. You're probably going to need another $3 million tax plus some. And what about the sewer? But the
bad thing is the property tax, the educational ad valorem tax won't be collected for 2 more years. So the school board has to react, add more teachers, add more space, do whatever they need to do, and they're not going to get that money until the year after.
The school can start building right now, full time, and never stop.
Well, that's what we've been doing since 1979 around here. We've been building schools.
There's more, they've said, well, we'll build this and there won't be any more trailers or anything out there, and nothing else was reduced.
How many are there at Robertsdale High School?
I'm not.
They had to start putting them out front. When you drive by, the portables are actually out front. There's no other room to put them.
The biggest, when you look at this and you think, okay, you're doing all of this is happening in Fairhope, and then you have a council running rogue buying $2.6 million worth of property, and you're thinking, wait a minute, how are you going to stay up with all of this infrastructure? You're letting the infrastructure go down at the same time. We need recreation property, but it comes down to public participation. The public has not been able to weigh in on this. That's my main complaint. And the council, Boone, Brown, and Burrell, have taken advantage of their positions to push this site. So there should be some pushback from citizens. If it's not, it's going to be, you're going to pay $2.6 million for some land that is just going to sit there for years, and most likely the next council, when these guys won't be there, I hope, then they'll have to deal with that.
All right. So you ready to get to another topic, Paul?
I'm sure it's related.
Well, it ain't unrelated. I want to talk about the history of corruption.
The silent tax.
The silent tax. So last night here in Bay Minette, we had a celebration of Removal Day, the 118th anniversary of the theft of the county records from the Daphne courthouse up, and of course they moved them up here to Bay Minette. So I guess we can start there. After the courthouse theft, I'm not going in any chronological order. I just want to hit all these. So, Paul, are you aware that Faulkner State Community College merged with several other of the colleges in our 2-year college system a few years ago?
Right. I don't know the details, but I do remember that.
Well, so the Bay Minette location, or what used to be Faulkner, became the main campus for Coastal Alabama Community College. And that includes 16 different campuses spread over 4 different counties. Now, when they did that, how many people do you think they hired to expand the staff in the personnel department?
No idea.
Well, I think the answer is 0.
None?
And so they went from, well, we'll get there. So this article, and Gabriel Tynes over at the Lanyap wrote this.
Baldwin Lanyap.
Back on September 25th. And it's about someone I know. And she was the vice president for personnel or human resources. Her name's Laura Burks. Have you ever met her?
No, but I read that article.
Okay, so she was put on administrative leave about a year ago after an audit of her performance was done at the request of the chancellor. So he went outside of the coastal system and went to another personnel director in another school and said, hey, I want you to go over and do a performance audit of these people at Coastal. Now, so based on that audit, they put her on leave and said she wasn't doing her job, okay?
Mm-hmm.
They had this hearing back on, I think it was the 25th of September. At least that's when the article was written. And the testimony at the hearing was that Dr. Branch, who was at the time the president of Coastal, he had received an anonymous letter saying that there was corruption going on at several, not at their campus, but at several of the other campuses. Mm-hmm. Now, Dr. Branch came and testified that he appointed or instructed Ms. Burks and the, I don't know if you call them a police chief, but, they have campus security or police or whatever. So their chief and Ms. Burks and tasked them with investigating this corruption. Well, they got to a certain point, and their allegation is they finally had a meeting with the chancellor, and he came down and beat his fist on the table and said, y'all need to get back to educating kids and turn this over to the proper authorities and forget all this stuff. So their position is the secondary school system is trying to cover up corruption, and and let me say this, in Ms. Burke's, not in her defense, but another factor to take into consideration. Since they put her on admin leave, guess how many people they have hired to work in the personnel department down at Coastal? Five people have taken her place. And so the performance, you just got to imagine, she went from one campus with probably 40, 50 people working there to what did I say before? 16 campuses. And so they bring all the personnel records down there and pile them up in the hallway. Whenever she needs one, she has to go out there and rummage and get it. Anyway, it's something to think about. I've called the chancellor's office. Nobody wants to talk to me. I've called several times. The funny thing is, Al Thompson is the chairman of the Secondary Education Board, and he lives here in Bay Minette. And I just got to tell you, Gary Branch was president out at Faulkner when I went there in 1992, okay? He's been around here a while. That man has credibility, and he says this is what went down. I don't know why he would lie for anybody. I mean, can you imagine why some guy with 30 years in the retirement system would risk all that to perjure himself in a quasi-judicial proceeding?
Doesn't sound logical.
It doesn't to me either. And of course, the chief of police down there is singing the same song. That hey, we were looking into all this, and the chancellor said, hey, y'all need to get off this.
Well,
or else, and so the or else has happened.
Well, Harry, if you raise too much hell, they'll take your credentials away.
Maybe. I'm not touching that one. All right, so moving on from coastal Alabama and the present time, I want to take you back to my genteel childhood here in Bay Minette, Alabama, where I grew up, right across from the elementary school. And across the hedge lived, guess who, Paul?
No idea.
The district attorney for Baldwin County.
Oh.
Have you ever heard about Mr. Hendricks?
I can't quite remember whether I knew what year was that? That was way back.
Yeah, I was 6,
yeah,
I think.
That was a ways back, Harry.
That was a ways back. So if you go to our Facebook page, we posted this a little while ago. The citation is 607 Southern 2nd, 1254, and it's a 1992 case from the Supreme Court. And I'm just going to read you just a little bit of this because it's almost unbelievable. The plaintiff, James A. Hendricks, appeals from the trial court's order dismissing his petition to compel Governor Guy Hunt to appoint him to the office of supernumerary district attorney. So in the state of Alabama, Paul, if you've served more than, I can't remember how many years it is, either 20 or 25 years, they will make you a supernumerary district attorney, and you are available to go fill in for another district attorney, or someone can call you and ask you a question or whatever. So we'll get to the absurdity here in just a second. The facts of this case are not in dispute. Hendricks was elected to the office of District Attorney of Baldwin County in November 1958, and he served in that capacity until 1981. In 1981, Governor Fob James appointed Hendricks as a supernumerary district attorney for Baldwin County. On April 13th, 1983, Hendricks was convicted in a federal court on marijuana conspiracy charges and was sentenced to 5 years in a federal penitentiary. As a result of the conviction, Hendricks was removed from the roles of active supernumerary district attorneys. Hendricks was released on parole in November 1985, and he completed his sentence in 1988. He then petitioned the state of Alabama Pardons and Parole Board for a pardon and restoration of his civil and political rights. On April 4th, 1998, the board granted Hendricks pardon and ordered that all civil and political rights which were forfeit as a result of his conviction be restored. Therefore, Hendricks petitioned the court to reinstate him as an attorney authorized to practice law in the courts of Alabama, which was granted in 1998. So even when you're the DA,
right,
and you get caught, I guess, distributing drugs
and go to jail
and go to federal prison, when you get out, they'll give you your law license back. Now, I will say that I'm very proud of our Supreme Court because they didn't buy the argument. We find no merit to Hendricks' argument was the summation. Regardless of which governor grants the commission, Hendricks seeks an appointment to the same office he forfeited pursuant to Section 3692. We affirm with the judgment in favor of Governor Hunt. So that was my next door neighbor who was the district attorney when I was 6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So when people think public corruption happens in New Jersey or Illinois or New York or whatever, I'm here to tell you it happens here all the time. And it happened over the damn hedge from my house when I was a kid.
And people need to understand that this public corruption by public officials that are elected to office or holding these positions, judges or whatnot, that corruption's a silent tax. If you think you don't feel it, you don't see it, you don't get an invoice for it. But trust me, you are paying millions of dollars in unnecessary money that's wrapped up in corruption, and you're paying for it.
So last year, one of the candidates for probate judge here in Baldwin County,
correct,
Representative Randy Davis, was indicted for, I believe it was conspiracy to defraud the federal government. Wasn't it some kind of scheme with a health insurance company?
Like a Ponzi thing, I think.
Well, I think it involved them doing something for somebody, and they were going to get some stock in the healthcare company.
You scratch my back, I scratch your back.
And then, of course, let's not forget that Governor Bentley, who was removed from office for corruption, for lack of a better word.
Right.
And then Mike Hubbard, he was convicted in 2016.
And has yet to serve a day.
Has yet to serve a day as of September 2019. Last time I looked, unless he went to jail today, he's not in there as far as I know.
Now, we have not had a conviction in Baldwin County of an elected official that I know of since, I believe it was 2003, the mayor of Orange Beach. I can't remember his name right now.
Steve Russo.
Steve Russo, right.
So here's another hilarity. Remember this case?
The straw man.
The straw man.
Right.
Guess who went to federal prison with Russo?
Who?
One of the attorneys representing one of the, I'm not going to say his name, but y'all can dang sure go look it up. And he dang sure went to federal prison, and he dang sure got his law license back when he got out. And he's practicing law, sitting in this courtroom, representing these guys.
Yeah.
A few weeks ago. All right, Nick, are we ready to play the video? So this is...
Let me say one other...
Okay, go ahead.
Let me say one other thing. On the Fairhope issue, you know, this land that they're trying to buy for the recreational property, I would like to encourage people, you can go on the website there for the city of Fairhope. You go back to the meeting on May 29th, city council meeting. Watch that first hour. You know, I hear a lot of criticism that, oh, it's the mayor, oh, it's the council. I'm telling you, it is the council. Listen to that first hour. Listen to how the mayor is fighting for the citizens. She's outlining, well, first of all, it was a conservation easement where they tried to give away $20 million worth of land, but we got that shut down because many lawyers told them it was illegal. But I mean, still, now we're buying this $2.6 million, and she has really stood up for the citizens in the community. She has tried to bring this to their attention, and they just keep, the council, Boone, Brown, and Burrell, just keep bullying it through. So go back and watch it and educate yourself. Now, you don't have to believe me on what I'm saying. Look at the true meeting.
So last year, on the heels of one of his co-members of the Baldwin County legislative delegation being indicted, okay, Senator Greg Albrittion proposed a bill, a new ethics bill.
Yeah.
And the folks at the folks over at AL.com and Reckon have created a little video. And of course, this did not pass. And I want to give Cam Ward and the Senate Judiciary Committee a plug, because I'm pretty sure this thing died in that committee. So if you're ready over there, Nick, cue it up.
Pay attention to this.
Go for it.
Alabama is known for lots of things. Crimson Tide football. Now, Auburn basketball. Unresolved conflicts with the rest of America, lane cake, hookworm. You know what? Maybe we should have stopped with sports. But today I want to talk about one of our signature accomplishments: leading the nation in political corruption. Each year, Alabama competes with the likes of Illinois and Louisiana for a national title that nobody wants. Heck, just a year ago, the heads of all three branches of our government held those jobs because their predecessors had been kicked out. But a group of Alabama senators has a plan to fix Alabama's corruption problem by making ethics crimes legal again. Legalization. It's not just for potheads anymore. Currently, any gift from a lobbyist to a lawmaker worth more than $25 is a crime, but under a bill introduced by State Senator Greg Albrittion, that limit would be gone. Free meals? Dig in. Sports tickets? Have a good time. Family vacations? What's a little trip to the happiest place on earth between friends? If SB 230 passes, it would all be legal as long as the lobbyists bearing those gifts reported them to whatever is left of the Alabama Ethics Commission. Because you don't have to break the law when you make the law. But that's not all. This bill redefines outright bribery. The quid pro quo, the this for that. As long as a bribe is less than $6,000, it would be a misdemeanor now, not a felony. Stealing from the government, as long as it's less than $6,000, that would be a misdemeanor too, for a government employee. But for you and me, it would still be a Class B felony, punishable by up to 20 years in prison. And it doesn't stop there. In Alabama politics, we hear a lot about family, but this bill has a different sort of family values in mind. Under Alabama's ethics law right now, it's illegal to enrich your mom, your dad, your siblings, even your brother-in-law. The next three branches of your family tree are pretty much off limits. But Albritton's bill would narrow that definition to a public official's spouse and dependent children. When you're 18, you might be out the door, but mom and dad can still give you a state contract to make your landing just a little bit more comfortable. In Alabama today, the Ethics Commission and the Attorney General's office are supposed to police and prosecute public corruption. Under Albritton's ethics bill, district attorneys would have to investigate public corruption. These investigations can take years, and a big one, and I'm looking at you, my cupboard, can cost millions of dollars. And district attorneys just don't have the resources to prosecute that. They have to spend their time chasing murderers and rapists and criminals, who can't put up a fight in court. A lot of goofy bills get introduced every year in the Alabama legislature, usually by some chucklehead or another who wants to make guns the state bird or replace Common Core with the Ten Commandments. But this bill is not just from some kook. Rather, the head of the Senate, Del Marsh, is a co-sponsor. It has real support from the sorts of people who get bills through the legislative process and into law. Not goofballs who wage symbolic battles to make their constituents giddy. This is serious stuff. The Alabama Ethics Commission opposes this bill. The Alabama Attorney General does too. And if you care about ending public corruption in this state, let your state lawmaker know that you are against it too. For Reckon, I'm Kyle Whitmire. Thanks for watching. If you like these videos, follow reckonbyal.com on Facebook.
All right. So let's hope the Albrittion bill is dead and it never rears its ugly head again. So have you ever considered that if you stole $6,000 from the state of Alabama, you'd go to prison for 20 years?
Right.
But if Greg did it.
Right. And Mike Hubbard. Nothing has happened. And, well, I'll stop there. But I will, the more development, the more building, the more money, the more pressure on a municipality, the more corruption, the more silent tax you're getting hit with.
So, Paul, did you have anything else you'd want to talk about?
No, I just would like to encourage people to, sign up for the Facebook and the podcast on Backstory Podcast. Also on the RIP Report. Like I said, this is consumer related. We're trying to inform the public the best we can about things that are going on that should not be going on and draw attention to it. But without you doing anything, everything we do is moot. So please cooperate.
And as promised, we're leaving you with excerpts from the Red Wedding Commission meeting where they fired all my friends and cut all the one of the things I want everybody to pay attention to, they fire, and I don't think we actually watched this part, but when they initially get in there, they pass a resolution and just fire everybody. And one of the points that Commissioner Dorsey makes is that we don't need to be in the legal business, and by getting rid of these full-time attorneys, we're going to save all this money.
Right.
So how much money do you think they spent on legal fees since 2010?
I'd be scared to guess.
$3.9 million.
In Bay Minette.
Well, for the county.
For the county.
Just to that one particular law firm. Now, they have an open checkbook. You can go to baldwincountyal.com or .gov and just do a search.
Okay, now this meeting is
this is the organizational meeting
correct.
Of the Baldwin County Commission back in 2010.
Right, and this is
the drinking game.
Correct. This was
an
article that I believe Connie Baggett covered at the time.
She did cover it.
And what I'd like to point out to everybody is that they made this decision after they were elected, but not quite in office, but they met. So then they went into this meeting and made these decisions that they actually had got together with.
Watch Skip Gruber flip his lid.
Right. Before they were officially in, but they still were not supposed to do this. So if you look at it that way, then all of the firings and everything that happened since then was actually done on illegally.
Well, Paul, what you don't understand about the open meetings law is it's like a $5 misdemeanor fine and you can mail it in.
Right.
It's the biggest non-law that there is.
So what you're saying is that they paid the $5 beforehand.
I don't think it. Well, they claim that here's what's funny, and when you watch the video, Gruber says, "Well, it sounds to me like you boys might have got together ahead of time and made some decisions without me." And they said, "Well, we called the Attorney General and the Association of County Commissioners or whatever. If I get permission from the Association of County Commissions, I did do an inquiry with them, and they sent me an email back. And if they say it's okay, I'm going to put it up on our Facebook page." That is not what the law says, and that is not what anybody at the association would have told them.
Well, one good thing about listening to this is that Mr. Dorsey is no longer with us.
And this is what everybody forgets about. When they're talking to me, they're talking to a guy that spent 15 years in the damn salt mines and county government.
Right.
I know people all over the state in all facets of regulatory agencies, you name it. And so when you try to snow me, that's just a bad thing to do. So anyway, thanks everybody for watching. We're gonna do an exit and let y'all watch this, and I hope you enjoy it. And if you have a beer, try to keep up. If every time you hear something that you think's BS, take a drink, but don't drive afterwards because you won't be able to.
Right. This is Podcast 6.
Podcast 6.
I hope you'll catch us on the next one. Thank you much for listening.
Legal department, if you take it across the board, what the whole legal department cost us, it cost us about $85 an hour. We're fixing to enter a contract for $225 an hour. Where is the cost savings? These are the issues that have not been brought into open discussion with this commission. And for us to sit up here today and make this decision, I think is very wrong. And if we're going to do this today, I'd like to also add some more positions to this that I think that we can do without also. So with that being said, I'll listen to what the rest of the commissioners have to say.
Thank you, Commissioner Gruber.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioners, Commissioner Dorsey.
Yes, sir. A little bit of a contradiction in statements there that we've not had time to deal with these people and meet these people and talk to these people, yet we've treated them poorly, which I think is, I find offensive and I take personally. This resolution is based on 4 months of being involved in each of the commission meetings, each of the workshop sessions, the budget meetings, meeting with each of the department heads, meeting with employees around the county. Some of these departments are at 2006 staffing levels, and we are significantly less in workload required for this current economy. We're looking forward to an economy next year that our budget is going to be reduced next year from this year, and we have to make preparations today to do that. Our legal department is employed full-time, and I don't believe that we need to have legal staff on. It's $85 an hour, yes. If you break down full-time, 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year. I don't believe that we need to have legal services throughout every single day of the year. The estimate that in savings that we'll have just in the legal department alone is $300,000. That's significant money to Baldwin County today. That's all, Mr. Chairman.
The only comment I'd like to say is I ran to bring more efficient government to Baldwin County. I think the voters spoke. My supporters and people that encouraged me to run believes that we need a more efficient government, a government that works for the people of this county. I'd like to send a message to the county employees, understand that the citizens are our ultimate bosses, that we have to do our jobs well, we have to be cost effective, but we also have to give the resources to the people out in the field to be able to get their jobs done so they can be efficient. We've got to make some tough decisions today to get those resources. County Commissioner, one of their main responsibilities are roads, bridges, and drainage. Just a few, but if you ever pick up the manual of the County Commissioner, that's one of their leading things. There's tough decisions that have to be made in this county to make sure that we stay financially sound, but we still have responsibilities that we need to meet. We need to support the Sheriff's Department for public safety. And we have to build trust that the tax dollars are being spent well because of the issues that our sister governing bodies like the Board of Education, they're in a financial tough time too. So we have to be responsible to the citizens that we're spending their money well, and this is part of the action. It's not whether these people are good or bad or their personalities. It's just a business decision that we've had to make as a commission. Thank you.
Other comments?
Well, what I was asking is am I going to be allowed to, being that these were brought up by other ones, is am I going to be allowed to make some suggestions also?
Well, motion's on the floor. If you have an amendment you'd like to offer.
I'd like to amend it to also include position number 415, which is the county administrator, which has a salary of $85,000 a year, and that will go very well towards helping with paving some roads.
Say again the position you want.
Of assistant county administrator.
Is that a motion?
That's a motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to abolish or rip the assistant county administrator. Do I have a second? There being no second, then back to the main motion. That motion failed. I guess we can call for the question now. I will only add to this that, you know, these two gentlemen ran as others did for this office just like we all did. And and they listened to the people. They certainly circulated the county. I know they visited every building we have in the county and visited with the employees. And they listened to the people. And I really believe they are bringing what they understood was their mandate when they got elected. And I'm supportive of that. I told them at the time I would be supportive of those recommendations they came forward with if I could be of support. Some things I couldn't, but what we have before here certainly seems reasonable. It's not the last of it, but it's just the beginning in my understanding. And during these economic times we're in, I think the nation, the state, and this county needs to address issues such as this. Government has just expanded too far, too much, in too many people's lives, and we're trying to bring it back into a smaller, more efficient government. Okay? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 3-1 with Commissioner Gruber voting no. Next.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, next item
Mr.
before
Chairman.
you, item IA3. Pardon me.
Mr. Chairman, would the chairman allow me to make a comment?
Okay, it's after this motion has taken place?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Certainly.
It may be my last
No,
opportunity.
sir, I looked for you and didn't see you. I didn't know you weren't who you were.
My apologies. Maybe my last opportunity to address the commission, so I wanted to say as a sort of a semi-parting comment, and that the citizens, the employees of this county are good people, and you know that, and you know that as well as I do. And I'd like to say that hopefully in some way I've left some sort of positive impact, and my final statement would be to hopefully that God will bless them, and of course anything that you do in the future may be God's will, and may each decision that you make may be blessed.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you so much.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, next item before you, item IA3. You will see a replacement item as a paper packet in your paper packet before you. Considerations related to counsel for the Baldwin County Commission. The recommendation before you, Commissioners, is authorized at Section 6 of Act Number 239, 1931 as amended. Approve the execution of a contract for services between the Baldwin County Commission and Blackburn and Connor PC, applicable to the Baldwin County Commission's appointment, designation of counsel for the Baldwin County Commission, which position shall be styled as the Baldwin County Attorney.
Okay. You have the recommendation before you.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we approve a contract of services with the Baldwin County Commission and Blackburn and Connor as the IA3 states.
Okay. Have a motion?
I'll second that motion.
Second, Commissioner. Any other?
Yes, sir. As continued discussion of the RIF of the legal department, I don't think that the Baldwin County needs to be in the legal business. I've known Mr. Connor and Mr. Blackburn for years and years. They're some of the top attorneys in this county, and I think Baldwin County would be well served to have them on our team.
Comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Gruber, yes.
I've got a question. I understand, I do know that there are some pending cases against the county that this firm has against the county right now on a couple of issues with some zoning stuff. And how are they going to be able to serve us and their clients also?
Well, that's
It's
matter
a
of-
conflict of, be a conflict of interest, and I just want to know how they're going to handle that.
only they can answer that, but they couldn't ethically do a lot of these things that you brought up. So I guess they can answer that once they're appointed. We've had other county attorneys. Mr. Red Wilkins was county attorney. Sometimes he'd have a conflict. Mr. Wills, Bob Wills was county attorney. Sometimes their firm had a conflict with the county's interest, and they just recuse themselves and have another attorney act in their stead. But
If we're hiring the firm, because we're hiring the firm, we're not hiring just the attorney, we're hiring the whole firm. How can that firm represent the county if it's got other stuff going. Plus, if they excuse themselves from our contract, who are we going to rely on then?
That'd be something they'd have to answer, Commissioner.
Well, no, that's something we need to answer. That's something we need to decide if we're going to have an attorney that is going to be representing us in the future, and he's got a conflict of interest with us. How can he serve these commission?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, with your permission, I believe that Blackburn and Connor have already had discussions with the Alabama State Bar that has given them guidance on the matter. And also, I believe they're going to prepare for a process for when the situation with which Commissioner Gruber brings up will be handled in an effort to these interests. They will retain counsel, which will serve in their stead, I believe.
Well, it seems to me, Mr. Chairman, that this is another thing that was decided on by this body without me having any input whatsoever into it. And whether y'all want to accept it or not, the citizens of this county also voted me to represent them. And if this is, the way we're going to continue to have stuff bring forward of not knowing and meeting with, and so we can bring this out in open, this is not county government at its best. I am disappointed that like I say, this is the agenda should have never came here today. We should have had a discussion, but I know what the outcome this is going to be already. So with that, I will not delay it any longer.
Okay, but as far as anything, discussions taking place before these two gentlemen took office this morning, or I did as well. After an election, you have a transition time. That happens right now. Governor-elect Bentley is meeting with his transition team all over the state and deciding who will serve in what office. He may announce those before he's actually sworn in. But this is perfectly legal. It was checked with the Attorney General's office, checked legally to be certain that we were all right. I talked to Sonny Brassfield with the Association of County Commissioners, with their lawyer, Mary Pons. All of this was perfectly in order. There's nothing conducted that was in violation of the Open Meetings Act. And I hope what will begin today, we got a lot of applause for this, not the way government's supposed to operate. We've operated in the past, but that is the past. We're on a new path here today, and so you can take your seat back again. I'm not going to recognize you.
Oh, you won't allow me to speak on this issue?
If you'll sit back down, please, so that gentleman will remove you. If you don't.
You won't allow me to speak?
Would you remove him? No, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, but what this is the beginning of is more open government.
You just made your point.
Okay, this is the beginning of a more open government, and if you want to watch it function, you're present in here, and we welcome you here. Your comments and your laughter and your interrupting the meeting is not allowed and won't be allowed. And I thank you for that. All those in favor of this motion, they'd be known by saying aye. Aye.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, at this time.
Opposed? I do. You're mighty weak with it. All the mics are off. But opposed?
Nay.
Okay, we have 3 in favor of the motion, 1 no. Commissioner Gruber, motion passes. So any comments before we recess? We will recess after this meeting for about 30 minutes to allow things to settle in, and hopefully we can get some order to this. And now, if you're going to continue with outbursts, we don't need that here this morning. That may be the way you've conducted business in the past, but hopefully we'll be respectful to one another and we'll act accordingly. I appreciate that. Did you have comment?
No, sir.
Okay. This commission is in recess for 30 minutes.